now I'm going to show how the rear mud flap goes on a 2023 Ford Maverick. And these are the ones that on the bag are going to say AB or BA at the end of the number, even though the instructions say BB on them for whatever reason. And if you've watched the video on how I do the front ones, like that, these are a little bit more complicated. And I have my own modification for how I do them because I have the parts and I think it's better because Ford actually has you putting in some of these plastic anchor plugs to anchor it when you're going to have some screws, and I'll show you what I mean when we get into it, which I think, let's use the screws. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so the first thing they're going to have you do is, and get the video to show here, right up inside of here. Light's not right, but anyways, there are two screws and they're here right behind the wheel. They go to the bottom and we have to remove them. So I've loosened them already with the ratchet. These are 7mm bolts, and hold on to them because they're going to be useful. So two 7mm bolts, we'll pop those out. And we also have some of these little plastic plugs that they use for holding the fender liner in. And just kind of a little gap under the head, pry it out, and then you can grab them and actually pull them right out. That's the type of thing they are. Now these, they say throw away, but if you're a good mechanic, you'll save them for some other project or some other idea you have later on. So I just showed these two steps, but what they show next, they show you separating the fender liner, which is this right here, pulling it back like that, away from the body. And then they give you two clips, like these right here, and they want you, if you look at the picture, they're showing you to put them down here. Now that doesn't make any sense because Ford already, if you pry this fender liner back, and you pry this part back, already put some right there. So there's no need to replace those. So I'll tell you what I am going to do, and what I think is the best idea, is take these and put them on the body part up here so that you can screw the top of the mud flap in, since you're already going to have the bottom with nut plates that you don't need to add. So put those two right there, and they are lined up so that they match up with the holes in the fender liner already. So our screws have something to go into, like that. I'll go to the next page. And now they show you, of course, put the fender liner back. So boom, that's it, pretty easy. Then they show you here adding this other smaller clip, or another clip that they give you, another clip like this, to this part right here on the mud flap. This is going to sit like so on the vehicle, and the way they show it doesn't make sense to me because you're going to end up with a bolt sticking through here towards your tire, which is not a direction I would do. So what I would recommend with this as well is instead they give you a metal standoff, and you're going to need this in a minute, and you got to figure out which way it goes up, which way it goes down. And this is the passenger side. The passenger side has a much more direct one, but what I did on the other side, and I'll show you that in a minute, I put the clip like this on this metal standoff bracket. And I'll show you why in 1 second here. Bolt head through the mud flap into the standoff piece that you need here on the inside, like that. And that way the stem, or the tip of the bolt, is going to be going to an area that you don't have to worry about it touching your tires, and it's this actually makes more sense. I don't know what whoever put this together at Ford was thinking, because I would not put the screw the other way from the metal bracket forward facing towards my tire. And you can see what I'm talking about right there. They want the head of the screw facing aft, going through the mud flap, so the point of the bolts can be facing your tire, which is just a dumb installation if you ask me. So we're flipping that around. Then, of course, we're going to put the mud flap up to the vehicle, like so. There it is. That's the way it's going to be mounted. And we're going to put, they want us to use those plastic plugs they supplied. However, if you do the nut plates the way I do, and you don't remove the ones that were already installed at the factory, you can reuse the 2 bolts that you pulled out from the bottom up on the top, since they have plenty of grip length, even though they are slightly shorter than the ones. I'll show you the difference in length here. Slightly shorter, very, very slightly, than the ones that came with the kit, like that. But I'm going to take these 2 shorter ones, and we're going to install them in these upper holes up here on the mud flap, since they have plenty of length. So there's the upper one, and lower one's right here. Sorry about the light. There we go. Now you can see it's there. So those are the 2 that were down here, and now down here we have extra layers of plastic, so we'll use the longer ones that are supplied with the kit. So there's the lower one and the upper one. There's the 2 we removed. There's the one over here going to the link, which is going to bolt right onto the structure of the vehicle here, and I think we'll have an extra bolt, but we'll find out here in a second. So go ahead and tighten up the bolts, and what I really recommend is up here on the top edge, pull out your mud flap as much as possible so that this edge here is not wearing on the paint as it flexes before you tighten that bolt all the way down. As soon as you start to feel some tension, give this a good hard tug so that it has a little bit of a gap there. You might think it looks goofy, and you can if you want. I'm saying how I'm going to do it. But this way, it shouldn't rub on the paint, and I also might even recommend getting some of that anti-chafe tape like 3M makes. It's adhesive, and we just stick it right underneath that edge to also keep from wearing any of this extremely thin paint that Ford is using on the Maverick away, so that you don't get a nice line of rust right there. Alright, so with all 4 of those bolts tight from your top down to your bottom, now we have to work on that link back there. We have to go underneath to do that. Okay, so looking up underneath here, you can see that if we tighten up this bracket tight against the mud flap, we're going to end up right underneath the head of that bolt, which already has a nut plate as well. Now this is an XLT, this is a hybrid, and the difference between driver and passenger is the passenger, there is all of this plastic under here, under the rear end. I'm not even sure what it encloses, but it's boxed in pretty well, goes up to the frame there, and it makes this nice box. But on the driver's side, it's all wide open, so I want to cover up that metal piece, try and protect that from road salt so that doesn't get salt sitting on top of it and corrode away. Alright, so I have loosened that bolt, put it through the bracket, tighten it finger tight just a little bit right now, started it. And then I'm going to go around here and I'm going to tighten the head that's on the mud flap on this side up before I tighten this up, just so everything is lined up the way I want it. So now I have this bolt tightened up on the mud flap the way I want, and once again not going the way Ford was showing. I think that's a stupid way. And I'm reusing the bolt that was in there. Ford probably would want me to use the extra bolt that they gave me, but I'll save that for something else. So tighten this one down now. Okay, so we got one extra bolt, which is never a bad thing doing car repair. You never know when you could use it somewhere else. It's a standard size, it's a 7mm bolt. Mud flap is on. That little extra bracket on the inboard side keeps it nice and secure. It seems like a very nice, pretty rigid setup. Like the little Ford logo there. This is only on the rear ones. The front ones don't have that. And showed you on what happened on the other side there. And how it is a little different. I'm going to be adding a piece, and actually on the rear passenger side one, or driver's side actually, all you have to attach this to stabilize this inner corner is this plastic, and they give you this brace. Now they showed putting the nut plate on the mud flap. I'm putting it on the bracket, and I'm doing it on the bracket here as well. And then what I'm going to do to locate the hole correctly is I just have it's a awl here, and put it right down through, if I can, the back of the nut plate where I want it located, so that it has some meat to hold on to on this channel. And then I'm going to punch it through the plastic right there, and that's how I know where my bolt will go. But I'm doing it towards the inside edge so that it has more meat to hold on to. So now you can see it's through the plastic, down through the nut plate right where I want it. I put a bolt through that, and it's going to hold it right through that. So this right here, that bracket up there, is the one that I'm concerned about rusting out and leaving the bottom corner of the side of the truck flapping. That black plastic box right there is the little cargo cubby I added to my bed on the driver's side, and I wanted these to help protect that piece up there. And you'll notice Ford didn't really give me any protection. I'm probably actually going to get another sheet of vinyl, plastic, I don't know, something fairly substantial like these mud flaps, and make a piece that covers that gap just to help with it. So before I mentioned that really big gap on the left hand side, and why it really bugs me is if you look down underneath, you're looking right up inside the back of the bed there. That's a whole bunch of sheet metal that is going to get splattered but good with road salt and sand and whatever other gunk I drive through. And that is a major fail on the part of Ford, because these are Ford mud flaps. So I was like, you know what, I gotta come up with something better. So today I was in the store and I found these El Cheapo, I think they cost me 20 bucks, mud flaps, which supposedly there's a whole list of vehicles they can fit, and what do you know, the Maverick is not on there. But funny thing about it, here's the one for this side, and literally it's covering the exact same amount of space. Like, I really could have saved my money and just mounted these there instead, and still had that ridiculous gap, but actually more covered than the Ford ones. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I want to put it so that it completely covers that gap, so that whatever gets splattered is either going against the wheel well liner, which is actually plastic in the back. In the front they're felt. It's a carryover from the Maverick, or the Focus. But in the back here, they are actually plastic, which I think is even better. And all I got to do is just simply match up the holes for the mounting hardware, drill through this, and just install this right over that, and won't even really be obvious what I did. So the first thing I'm going to do is move the mud flap so that I can lay this piece over that piece and then drill through to match. All right, so that's the overlap I'm looking at, and I got it clamped, and basically that's going to cover everything that Ford didn't with their OEM. I got these with my Ford points for buying my truck, but you want to line up this inside edge with that inside edge, and then it's just a matter of getting a drill and drilling through these holes to help you be able to locate everything when it goes back together. And so then with the holes all drilled through, put your first bolt in right there, line it up with the top nut plate, and set it all back together. So there it is, and that hole, that big gap that was there, now doesn't exist. And all it took was just a little bit of extra plastic. I like the coverage that this gives with the Ford one, but I didn't like that hole, and now it's gone. And as always, make sure you space this top edge out away from your paint so that it doesn't chafe into it from flexing with the air going down the highway or whatever, because otherwise it's gonna chew right through that paint and nothing flat. So just follow up showing how it looks with mud flaps that I definitely think are worth it. Help protect the vehicle from road salt, rock, sand, anything that could get tracked up here. And there it is. I think it looks pretty nice, and I got it with my Ford Pass points, so it didn't really cost me anything. I love the way Ford kind of gives you a way to buy accessories for free after you buy your vehicle. Can't beat it. Just checking to see how effective these mud flaps are. Raining this morning, drove in on wet roads. As you can see, the space right here behind them is dry. The same thing is true up here in the front, which means that's going to protect all this area from salt, sand, and rocks. That's exactly what I wanted.